The room smelled of burnt flesh and ozone, a cruel reminder of the hours, days, he had spent strapped to the cold, unyielding surface of the interrogation chair. General Elias Vorn's muscles twitched involuntarily, his body betraying him even as his mind clung stubbornly to defiance. The alien creatures, with their slick green skin and bulbous, expressionless eyes, circled him like vultures. Their strange, gurgling language grated on his ears, a sound as alien as their grotesque forms. He had lost track of time. The concept of hours or days held no meaning here in the belly of this monstrous alien warship. They had taken him from the battlefield after his unit's final stand, a desperate attempt to hold Earth's last bastion against the invaders. He remembered the chaos, the screams of his soldiers, and then nothing, until he woke up here. The aliens called themselves the Zhyrr'khan, though Elias had other names for them. Names he spat through bloodied teeth whenever they leaned in too close. They wanted something from him. Codes, strategies, weaknesses in Earth's defenses. They didn't understand humans. Not really. They thought pain would break him. They thought their machines could strip away his resolve like peeling bark from a tree. But they didn't know Elias Vorn. Another surge of energy ripped through his body, white-hot and searing. His back arched against the restraints as a guttural scream tore from his throat. The Zhyrr'khan technician chittered in what Elias assumed was satisfaction, its elongated fingers dancing over a console embedded in its chest. The others watched with detached curiosity, their eye stalks swiveling to capture every twitch and spasm. Pathetic, Elias rasped through cracked lips when the agony subsided enough for him to speak. His voice was raw but steady, each word laced with venom. Is this all you've got? No wonder you've been getting your slimy asses handed to you. One of the aliens stepped forward, a taller one with a jagged crest running along its elongated skull. Its uniform was adorned with strange insignias that likely marked it as an officer or interrogator. It leaned in close, its breath reeking of ammonia. "You will break," it hissed in heavily accented English, its voice like nails dragged across metal. "All humans break." Elias laughed, a hoarse, bitter sound that echoed off the metallic walls. "You don't know humans," he said through gritted teeth. "But you're about to learn." Something inside him snapped then, not his spirit, but something deeper, something primal and unrelenting. He felt it like a spark catching fire in his chest, spreading outward until it consumed every fiber of his being. The restraints around his wrists and ankles groaned under the sudden pressure of muscles surging with newfound strength. The Zhyrr'khan officer noticed the change too late. Elias roared as he tore free from the chair's bindings, shards of alien metal flying in all directions. The technician shrieked and scrambled backward, its eye stalks quivering in panic. Elias moved like a predator unleashed, fast and brutal. His hands found the officer's throat before it could react, crushing cartilage and silencing its gurgling protests forever. He turned on the others next, using the officer's limp body as a weapon to bludgeon them into submission. The room descended into chaos as alarms blared and more Zhyrr'khan soldiers poured in. They didn't stand a chance. Elias fought like a man possessed, or perhaps like something more than human entirely. Every punch shattered bones. Every kick sent bodies flying into walls with sickening crunches. He grabbed one alien's weapon, a sleek rifle-like device, and turned it against them, cutting down wave after wave of reinforcements until the room was littered with green corpses. When the last soldier fell, Elias stood amidst the carnage, breathing heavily but unbroken. His uniform was torn and bloodied, some of it his own, but his eyes burned with an intensity that made even the ship's automated systems hesitate before sending more troops. He wasn't done yet. Grabbing a communicator from one of the fallen aliens, Elias barked into it in English, not caring if they understood or not. "Send me your general." The response came swiftly, a booming voice over the ship's intercom that dripped with arrogance and disdain. "You are an insect beneath my notice, human." Elias grinned, a feral expression that promised nothing but pain for whoever stood in his way. "We'll see about that." He stormed through the corridors of the alien vessel like an unstoppable force of nature, leaving destruction in his wake. Every ambush failed. Every trap was dismantled with brutal efficiency. The Zhyrr'khan had underestimated humanity's capacity for resistance, for vengeance, and now they were paying the price. Finally, he reached the command center, a cavernous chamber filled with holographic displays and manned by dozens of Zhyrr'khan officers scrambling to respond to his assault. At its center stood their leader, a towering figure clad in ornate armor that glimmered under harsh artificial light. The alien general turned slowly to face him, its eye stalks narrowing in what might have been disdain or fear. "You should have stayed, broken," it said coldly. Elias raised his stolen weapon, but then tossed it aside with deliberate contempt. "I don't need this to deal with you," he growled. And then he charged. Elias Vorn charged like a thunderstorm given flesh, his boots pounding against the sleek, alien floor as he closed the distance between himself and the Zhyrr'khan general. The towering alien spread its arms wide, as if to mock him, its jagged crest gleaming under the cold, artificial light of the command center. "You are but one," it hissed, its voice reverberating with an unnatural resonance. "One broken creature against the might of the Zhyrr'khan Empire. Your defiance is meaningless." Elias didn't answer. Words were wasted on this thing. He let his fists speak instead. The first blow cracked against the alien's chest plate, sending a shockwave through the room that rattled the consoles and made the lesser officers scatter like frightened insects. The general staggered, but recovered quickly, its massive hand lashing out to strike Elias across the jaw. The force of the hit sent him skidding across the floor, but he rolled with it, springing back to his feet with a snarl. "You hit like a drunk recruit," Elias spat, wiping blood from his split lip. His eyes burned with unrelenting fury as he launched himself at the alien again. The two clashed like titans in a storm, their battle shaking the very foundations of the ship. The Zhyrr'khan general was strong, inhumanly so, but Elias fought with something far greater than strength. He fought with purpose, with rage forged in the fires of loss and defiance. Every punch he landed was a reminder that humanity would not bow, every kick a declaration that Earth would not fall. The alien general roared in frustration as Elias ducked under one of its swings and drove his shoulder into its midsection, sending it crashing into a console. Sparks flew as alien machinery crumpled under their combined weight. The general lashed out wildly, catching Elias across the ribs and sending him sprawling once more. But Elias didn't stay down. He never stayed down. He grabbed a jagged piece of debris, a shard of metal torn from the ruined console, and hurled it like a spear. It struck true, embedding itself in the alien's shoulder and eliciting a guttural cry of pain. Elias was on it in an instant, his fists hammering down on its armored head like pistons. "You think you can take our world?" he growled between blows. "You think you can break us? You don't know what humans are capable of." The alien general managed to shove him off with a desperate surge of strength, its eye stalks swiveling wildly in what could only be fear. It reached for a weapon, a sleek blade that hummed with energy, but Elias was faster. He kicked it from the alien's grasp and followed up with a knee to its abdomen that doubled it over. Grabbing it by the crest, Elias slammed its head into the floor with enough force to crack the metal plating beneath them. The room fell silent except for his ragged breathing and the faint hum of damaged machinery. But Elias wasn't done. He grabbed the alien by its throat and hauled it to its feet, dragging it toward the central console where holographic displays flickered erratically. "You're going to set this ship's course for Earth," he growled, his voice low and dangerous. "And then you're going to watch as I tear your empire apart." The general gurgled something unintelligible. Whether it was defiance or pleading didn't matter. Elias slammed its head against the console until it complied, its trembling fingers inputting commands into the interface. The ship lurched as it changed course, engines roaring to life as they began their journey back to Earth. Elias threw the alien aside like discarded trash and turned to face the remaining officers who had been too cowardly to intervene. "Anyone else want to try me?" he barked. They scattered without hesitation, fleeing through every available exit like rats abandoning a sinking ship. Satisfied, Elias turned his attention back to the general, who lay slumped against the console, clutching its wounded shoulder. "Get up," he ordered coldly. "We're not done yet." He dragged the alien through the corridors of its own ship as alarms blared and lights flashed red in warning. Resistance came in waves, soldiers desperate to stop him, but they were no match for his fury. He cut them down with stolen weapons or his bare hands, leaving a trail of carnage in his wake. By the time they reached Earth's atmosphere, there was no one left alive on board except for him and his prisoner. The ship descended through thick clouds toward what had once been one of humanity's great cities, but was now little more than rubble under Zhyrr'khan occupation. As they landed in what remained of a public square, crowds of humans and aliens alike gathered to witness this unexpected arrival. Elias emerged from the ship like an avenging god, dragging the battered Zhyrr'khan general behind him by one arm. The humans stared in stunned silence. Many had thought him dead or captured forever. The aliens recoiled in fear at the sight of their leader, brought low. "This is what happens when you mess with humanity," Elias declared loudly enough for all to hear. His voice carried across the square like thunder, filled with righteous fury and unshakable conviction. Without another word, he threw the alien general to the ground at his feet and raised one boot high before bringing it down on its skull with brutal finality. The crowd erupted, some cheering wildly, while others wept openly at this symbol of defiance and hope restored. But Elias wasn't done yet. He turned his gaze toward the remaining Zhyrr'khan forces who stood frozen in terror at what they had just witnessed. "Run," he said simply, his voice low but filled with deadly promise. "Run back to whatever hole you crawled out of and tell them, Earth belongs to humans." And then he smiled, a grim, bloodied smile that promised nothing but vengeance for anyone foolish enough to return. Humanity had been brought low but not broken. They had suffered but not surrendered. And now they had their champion, a man who had faced hell itself and emerged victorious. Elias Vorn wasn't just fighting for survival anymore. He was fighting for revenge, and he wouldn't stop until every last one of those green-skinned bastards paid for what they'd done. Elias Vorn stood in the heart of the alien base, his breath coming in sharp, controlled bursts as he surveyed the labyrinthine corridors that stretched out before him. The Zhyrr'khan stronghold was a monument to their arrogance, an intricate web of glowing conduits, humming machinery, and towering spires of alien architecture. Every inch of it pulsed with energy, a living, breathing organism of technology that served as the nerve center for their operations on Earth. And Elias was about to tear it apart. The crowbar in his hand felt heavy, its cold steel smeared with alien blood and grime from his earlier rampage. It wasn't much, a crude tool by any measure, but in Elias's hands, it was a weapon of liberation. He had already used it to pry open doors, crush skulls, and rip apart panels of alien machinery. Now it would serve a higher purpose, sabotage. The Zhyrr'khan were watching him now. He could feel their eyes, or whatever sensory organs they used, tracking his every move through the base's surveillance systems. They had underestimated him once, treating him like a broken toy to be discarded after their torturous experiments. But now they knew better. Now they feared him. Good. Elias moved quickly, his boots striking the metallic floor with purpose as he made his way toward the central power core. He had studied enough of their technology during his captivity to understand the basics. Electrons were electrons, no matter what planet you came from. The Zhyrr'khan might have been more advanced than humanity in some ways, but their systems still relied on circuits, conduits, and power sources that could be disrupted with enough force. He reached an access panel embedded in the wall and jammed the crowbar into its seam. With a grunt of effort, he pried it open, exposing a tangled mess of glowing cables and crystalline nodes. Sparks flew as he yanked wires free and smashed components with brutal efficiency. The lights around him flickered and dimmed as the base's systems began to falter. "Let's see how you bastards like fighting in the dark," he muttered under his breath. The alarms came next, a cacophony of wailing sirens and flashing red lights that signaled his presence to every Zhyrr'khan soldier in the base. Elias welcomed it. Let them come. He was done hiding. The first wave arrived within moments. A squad of heavily armed aliens clad in sleek armor that shimmered like liquid metal. They moved with precision, their weapons trained on Elias as they advanced down the corridor. Elias didn't wait for them to fire. He hurled a piece of debris at their leader, catching it square in the eye stalk and sending it reeling backward. Then he charged, closing the distance before they could react. The crowbar swung in a deadly arc, shattering helmets and cracking skulls with each brutal strike. The aliens fought back with desperation, but Elias was relentless, a whirlwind of rage and steel that left no survivors. When the last soldier fell, Elias stood over their broken bodies, panting heavily, but uninjured. He wiped alien blood from his face and continued forward, deeper into the base. His path was one of destruction. Every console he passed was smashed. Every conduit was ripped apart or severed completely. He targeted communications hubs first, silencing their ability to coordinate reinforcements or call for help from orbiting ships. Then he moved on to weapon systems, disabling turrets and dismantling racks of alien rifles before they could be used against him. The Zhyrr'khan responded with increasing desperation. More soldiers poured into the corridors, some armed with experimental energy weapons that scorched the walls around Elias as he dodged their fire. Others deployed drones that buzzed through the air like mechanical hornets, their stingers crackling with electricity. Elias adapted quickly. He used cover whenever possible, ducking behind pillars or diving into side rooms to avoid being overwhelmed, and struck back with ruthless efficiency. He scavenged weapons from fallen enemies when his crowbar wasn't enough, turning their own technology against them in a grim display of poetic justice. As he fought his way closer to the power core, Elias began to notice signs of panic among the Zhyrr'khan forces. Their movements grew erratic. Their formations broke down under pressure. They weren't used to this kind of warfare, to an enemy who fought not for survival, but for vengeance. By the time Elias reached the central chamber housing the power core, resistance had all but crumbled. The remaining soldiers had either fled or barricaded themselves in distant sections of the base, hoping to escape his wrath. The power core itself was an awe-inspiring sight, a massive sphere suspended in midair by columns of crackling energy that arced between towering pylons. Its surface pulsed with light, blue and white patterns that shifted like waves on an ocean, and its hum resonated deep within Elias's chest. He approached cautiously, studying its structure for weaknesses. It didn't take long to find them. Exposed conduits running along its base, control panels mounted on nearby walls, coolant pipes feeding into its core. Elias gripped his crowbar tightly and got to work. The first strike severed a coolant pipe, releasing a jet of freezing vapor that hissed as it filled the room. The second blow smashed through one of the control panels, causing sparks to rain down like fireworks. With each swing of his crowbar, Elias dismantled another piece of alien technology until the power core began to destabilize. The hum grew louder, angrier, as cracks formed along its surface and energy surged uncontrollably between its pylons. The entire chamber shook violently. Pieces of debris rained down from above as explosions erupted throughout the base. Elias stepped back to admire his handiwork for a moment before turning toward an emergency exit marked by glowing symbols he had learned to recognize during his captivity. "Time to go," he muttered grimly. As he sprinted down collapsing corridors toward freedom, Elias couldn't help but smile despite himself. The Zhyrr'khan had made one critical mistake when they decided to invade Earth. They underestimated humanity's capacity for resistance, for ingenuity, for revenge. And now they were paying for it in blood and fire. This was only the beginning. Elias Vorn emerged from the crumbling alien base, his body battered but unbroken, his crowbar still clutched in his bloodied hand. Behind him, the Zhyrr'khan's stronghold was collapsing in on itself, a dying beast convulsing in its final moments. Plumes of smoke and fire erupted from its shattered spires, and the ground trembled as explosions rippled through its core. The once imposing monument to alien domination was now nothing more than a smoldering ruin, a testament to human defiance. But Elias wasn't done. Not yet. The Zhyrr'khan's leader, its true mastermind, was still out there. Somewhere beyond the chaos, the alien commander who had orchestrated Earth's invasion watched from the safety of their command ship, high above the planet's surface. Elias could feel it, a gnawing certainty in his gut. This wasn't just about vengeance anymore. It was about sending a message. Humanity wasn't prey. Humanity wasn't weak. And humanity would never kneel. He turned his gaze skyward, where the massive Zhyrr'khan mothership loomed like a second moon, casting its shadow over the battlefield below. Its sleek black hull glimmered with alien runes, and its underside bristled with weaponry capable of leveling entire cities. It was a fortress, a floating citadel that had rained death upon Earth since the invasion began. Elias gritted his teeth. He was going up there. The wreckage of the base provided him with what he needed: a transport vessel, sleek and angular with a cockpit that glowed faintly from within. Most of the Zhyrr'khan forces had fled or been annihilated in his rampage, leaving the craft unguarded. He climbed inside and began familiarizing himself with its controls. The interface was alien, symbols and glyphs that made no sense to human eyes, but Elias had spent enough time dismantling their technology to understand its basic functions. With a growl of determination, he powered up the ship's engines. The cockpit hummed to life around him as the craft lifted off the ground, its thrusters roaring against the night sky. Through the viewport, he could see Earth stretched out below him, a patchwork of ruined cities and burning landscapes that bore witness to humanity's struggle for survival. "Hold on," he muttered under his breath as he angled the ship toward the mothership. "I'm coming for you." The ascent was swift but tense. As he approached the mothership's outer perimeter, automated defenses came online, turrets swiveling to track his movements and drones launching from hidden bays to intercept him. Elias gripped the controls tightly, weaving through bursts of plasma fire and swarms of enemy craft with sheer instinct and adrenaline. He wasn't a pilot by training, but desperation made him resourceful. He used every trick he could think of, diving into tight spirals to evade missiles, skimming dangerously close to the mothership's hull to avoid detection, and somehow managed to breach their defenses without being obliterated. The transport vessel landed hard in one of the mothership's docking bays, skidding across the polished floor before coming to a halt against a stack of alien crates. Elias climbed out quickly, crowbar in hand, and surveyed his surroundings. The docking bay was eerily quiet, too quiet. Rows of alien ships sat dormant under dim blue lights, their sleek forms casting long shadows across the metallic floor. Elias moved cautiously, his boots echoing with each step as he made his way toward an exit. He knew they were watching him. He could feel their eyes or sensors, tracking his every move through hidden cameras and surveillance systems embedded in the walls. The Zhyrr'khan wouldn't let him get far without resistance. And sure enough, it came. The first wave of soldiers appeared as he entered a wide corridor leading deeper into the ship. A dozen heavily armed aliens clad in shimmering black armor that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. They moved with precision, their weapons raised and ready to fire. Elias didn't hesitate. He hurled himself at them like a force of nature, his crowbar swinging in brutal arcs that shattered helmets and crushed bones with each strike. Plasma bolts sizzled past him as he weaved through their ranks, using their own bulk against them in close-quarters combat. One by one, they fell, some screaming in pain, others silenced instantly by well-placed blows to their skulls or throats. When it was over, Elias stood amidst a pile of broken bodies, his chest heaving with exertion but his resolve unshaken. He pressed on. The corridors grew narrower and more labyrinthine as he advanced toward what he assumed was the command center, the heart of the mothership where its leader would be waiting for him. More soldiers came at him in waves, some armed with energy blades that crackled menacingly as they swung at him, others piloting mechanical exocets that towered over him like walking tanks. But none of it mattered. Elias fought like a man possessed, or perhaps something more than human entirely. His crowbar became an extension of himself, an instrument of destruction that tore through armor and machinery alike with unrelenting force. He scavenged weapons when necessary, plasma rifles ripped from dead hands or grenades plucked from fallen belts, and used them without hesitation. By the time he reached the command center doors, a massive set of reinforced panels etched with glowing runes. He was drenched in sweat and alien blood, but undeterred. This was it. He pried open the doors with his crowbar and stepped inside. The room beyond was vast and circular, its walls lined with holographic displays showing Earth from orbit, the scars of war etched across its surface like wounds on flesh. At its center stood a throne-like structure surrounded by consoles and glowing panels. And seated upon it was him. The Zhyrr'khan leader rose slowly as Elias entered, a towering figure clad in ornate armor that shimmered like liquid obsidian under the cold light of the chamber. Its eye stalks swiveled toward him with an air of disdain, or perhaps curiosity, and its voice echoed through the room like grinding metal. "You are persistent," it said in heavily accented English. "But futile." Elias smirked grimly as he tightened his grip on his crowbar. "We'll see about that." Without another word, he charged forward, the final confrontation between predator and prey beginning at last amidst sparks and shadows on this alien stage where humanity's vengeance would be written in blood and fire. The Zhyrr'khan leader stood motionless as Elias Vorn charged, its towering form radiating an aura of cold, unshakable confidence. The alien's eye stalks shifted slightly, tracking the human's every movement, but it made no effort to retreat. Instead, it raised one clawed hand and activated a device embedded in its wrist. A shimmering energy field enveloped its body, crackling with raw power. "You are an anomaly," the alien leader said, its voice deep and resonant, reverberating through the chamber like the toll of a funeral bell. "A single human who defies the inevitable. But you are still just flesh and bone. You cannot win." Elias didn't slow down. He had heard enough of their arrogance, enough of their proclamations of superiority. His crowbar gleamed in the harsh light of the command center as he swung it with all his strength, aiming for the alien's head. The blow connected, but instead of shattering bone and cartilage, it struck the energy shield with a deafening clang. Sparks flew as the force of the impact sent vibrations up Elias's arms, but the Zhyrr'khan leader didn't so much as flinch. The alien tilted its head slightly, almost mockingly. "You see? Futile." Elias gritted his teeth and swung again, harder this time. The crowbar rebounded off the shield once more, leaving him momentarily off balance. The Zhyrr'khan leader seized the opportunity, lunging forward with unnatural speed and slamming a massive fist into Elias's chest. The impact sent him flying across the room. He crashed into a console, shattering glass and bending metal as pain exploded through his ribs. For a moment, he lay there gasping for air, his vision swimming with stars. But he wasn't done yet. With a growl of determination, Elias pushed himself to his feet. Blood dripped from his mouth and cuts on his arms, but his grip on the crowbar never faltered. He locked eyes, or what passed for eyes, with the alien leader and spat blood onto the floor. "You think that's enough to stop me?" he rasped. "You don't know what humans are made of?" The Zhyrr'khan leader's eye stalks narrowed in what might have been irritation, or perhaps unease. "You are stubborn," it admitted. "But stubbornness is not strength." Elias smirked through the pain. "No," he said, "but it's enough to outlast you." He glanced around quickly, taking in his surroundings. The command center was filled with alien technology, consoles, conduits, and glowing panels that pulsed with energy. The power core for the mothership was likely nearby, hidden behind layers of reinforced plating and security measures. But Elias didn't need to find it. He just needed to make everything around him unstable enough to bring it all crashing down. The Zhyrr'khan leader advanced slowly, confident in its shield and its superior strength. Elias let it come closer, feigning weakness as he stumbled toward another console. When it was within striking distance again, he suddenly lunged, not at the alien itself, but at one of the glowing conduits running along the wall. With a single powerful swing of his crowbar, he severed the conduit in a shower of sparks and energy. The lights in the room flickered violently as systems overloaded and alarms began to blare throughout the ship. "What are you doing?" the Zhyr'khan leader demanded, its voice tinged with something that might have been panic. Ending this, Elias growled. He moved like a man possessed, smashing every critical piece of equipment he could reach while dodging or deflecting the aliens' attacks. Each strike sent ripples of destruction through the ship's systems. Screens shattered, conduits exploded, coolant pipes burst open in hissing jets of vapor. The Zhyr'khan leader roared in frustration as it tried to stop him, but Elias was too fast and too determined to be caught again. Finally, he reached what he had been looking for, a central control terminal surrounded by glowing runes and pulsating energy fields. It was clearly important, likely tied directly to the ship's power core or navigation systems. Elias didn't hesitate. He drove his crowbar into its center with all his strength, shattering glass and severing wires in one devastating blow. The terminal erupted in a blinding flash of light as arcs of electricity danced wildly across its surface. The entire ship shuddered violently beneath their feet. "You fool!" the Zhyr'khan leader bellowed over the deafening roar of failing systems. "You will destroy us both." "That's kind of the point," Elias shot back with a grim smile. The alien lunged at him one last time, but this time Elias was ready. He sidestepped its attack and swung his crowbar upward in a brutal arc that caught it under its jaw. The force of the blow sent cracks spiderwebbing across its shield before finally shattering it entirely. Before the alien could recover, Elias grabbed one of its own weapons, a discarded energy blade, and drove it straight into its chest. The Zhyr'khan leader let out a choked gasp as black ichor poured from the wound. Its massive body swayed unsteadily before collapsing to its knees. Elias leaned in close, his voice low, but filled with unrelenting fury. "This is for Earth." With one final twist of the blade, he ended it. The alien fell lifelessly to the floor as alarms continued to scream around them. The ship was falling apart now, fires spreading through corridors, explosions rocking its structure, gravity flickering on and off as systems failed one by one. Elias knew he didn't have much time left. He sprinted back toward his stolen transport vessel, through collapsing corridors and clouds of smoke. By some miracle, or sheer stubbornness, he made it back just as another explosion tore through the docking bay behind him. The transport lifted off moments before the mothership began to break apart entirely. From his cockpit window, Elias watched as massive chunks of debris rained down toward Earth's atmosphere like falling stars, each one marking another victory for humanity against their oppressors. When he finally landed back on Earth amidst cheering crowds of survivors who had witnessed everything from below, Elias stepped out of his ship covered in soot and blood but standing tall. He raised his crowbar high above his head, a symbol not just of survival but defiance, and shouted 3 words that echoed across every corner of their battered world. "Humanity stands victorious." And for once, for perhaps the first time since their invasion began, the aliens weren't there to argue otherwise.